May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from happiness that is without suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment and hatred. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment and anger. May they abide in this way. I shall cause them to abide in this way. Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings had happiness in its causes. May they have this. I shall cause them to have this. Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and its causes. May they be free. I shall cause them to be free. Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirth and liberation's excellent happiness. May they never be parted. I shall cause them never be parted. Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. So we discussed a little bit about the meaning of loving kindness, which was the first of the four immeasurables. So, and I also explained the definition of loving kindness, which is a mind wishing that others be happy and meet with the causes of happiness. So when you look at this definition, you need to think about, number one, when we say may all sentient beings meet with happiness and the causes of happiness. What is happiness, first of all? I mean, this is a very popular word that we always talk about, but it's important to really precisely understand what is meaning of happiness. Happiness has many dimensions, but in a simple way, happiness probably means genuine mental satisfaction. Like, for example, if you help somebody, even if you don't get anything in return in terms of monetary values, but you will get genuine satisfaction. Even if you smile, things like that. So anything good that you do, especially selflessly or in an unconditional way, it is nothing but natural that you will get this deep down satisfaction. It's in our gene. It's in our nature. So genuine satisfaction. And that genuine, I'm using the word genuine satisfaction. That genuine satisfaction is not possible if you adopt deceitful means. Just like giving a piece of meat or food or something to the dog, with a wish to hit the dog with a stick. You see. So genuine satisfaction is called happiness. Right? Genuine satisfaction. Then on a bigger scale, of course, happiness refers to liberation or nirvana, a state where when you reach, there will be no falling back. Genuine satisfaction in that sense. Once you reach that state of liberation or nirvana is a state. Having once achieved that state, there will be no suffering. There will be no trouble, no problem, things like that, right? So that is what actually we all should aspire to do, right? Fleeting pleasures, even fleeting happinesses, not only in this life, but according to Buddhist teaching, that for many lives we have enjoyed those kind of fleeting pleasures and happinesses. But we are back to square one, because the happiness that we got at that level was not the reliable, permanent or everlasting happiness. So it's important to make this distinction between fleeting pleasures and reliable happinesses. As I touched yesterday, we do a lot of running in today's modern world. And that running is, you can watch this. That running, that very busy life that we lead today, is primarily for fleeting pleasures, not for happiness. That's why we get entrapped in endless cycles of problems, difficulties. One problem goes, another problem arises. It's like ceaseless waves on an ocean. We call it cycle of existence, samsara, right? So it is important, as we had discussed about our original slogan, I want long-lasting happiness, right? We discussed this. We came into this world with this slogan, I want long-lasting happiness. We need to remember that. If you want that long-lasting happiness, then that long-lasting happiness has to come primarily from your own mind, not from your senses. The pleasures that we enjoy are enjoyed by senses, sensual pleasures. We are completely enamored, completely distracted by sensual objects, sensual pleasures. The eye has to see endless images, beauties. The ear has to listen to, these days unfortunately, like many of us, even when we are driving and walking, our ears are plugged. In many cases, both the ears are plugged. Imagine that in many cases, there are cases of people having, horrific accident. You see, we are so attracted to sound, Japanese music, Chinese music, Tibetan songs, whatever, countless things are there. Then likewise, taste. We are so attached to taste that we waste so much money visiting those hotels and restaurants, where in many cases the food you get is much worse than what you can eat, what you can cook in your own home, much cheaper, but you go to these more expensive hotels. In many cases, because of that, you get food poison, you get sick, you see. Because people there, generally speaking, most of them are there to make profit, not to really genuinely serve you and contribute towards your health. Can you imagine these hotels are there to really contribute to your health? No. They only want your money. So there's no point that we, say bad things against these shopkeepers or restaurant who runs a restaurant, but we need to make sure that you don't become a victim of those situations. We don't have much time to explain in detail, but in Abhidharma and many Buddhist texts, it is clearly mentioned, even if you get obsessed with one sensual object, you are going to get into big problem. Now look at us, we are completely obsessed with all the 5 sensual objects. Physical form, of course, you want to see all those songs, dances, models or whatever, on the television, you're attracted to the form. Then sound, as I told you, all kinds of CDs, DVDs. Then smell, all kinds of fragrances. Then taste, restaurants. Then touch, all kinds of garments, clothes. Exactly as is explained in the Buddhist texts. Sometimes I do feel that these people might have studied Abhidharma to come up with their mall. If you visit a mall, it's more or less like that. The ground floor is fragrance to sprinkle, made from this flower, that flower. Move to the next floor, restaurant, next floor, clothes, next floor, television, next floor, CDs, DVDs. I was like amazed to see the striking resemblance of these malls and what has been explained in the Buddhist text. And then to make it more clear that the text explains that how you can get into trouble when you are obsessed. I'm not saying you don't enjoy, but if you get obsessed with just one sensual object, he gives the example of, say, butterfly. Butterfly is said to be obsessed with form, like a butter lamp. If you burn a butter lamp, the butterflies will come, go there, and you will see butterflies and other flies also. Dies in countless numbers, butterflies. Then it said that in ancient times when people want to hunt or kill a tiger, they put a trap somewhere and then play some music or songs or things like that, they come and get entrapped, sound. And then fish, you put something as a bait, fish will come, it will kill it. Elephant, you touch a little bit, it will sit down, and then you can enslave and chain that elephant. So these are examples. So I'm not saying that we should not enjoy those objects, but what I'm saying is, if you get obsessed, and especially if you think that you are going to get the long-lasting peace and happiness from these sensual objects, it's 100% sure you will not get that. And in fact, if you look closely, I can keep on talking about this endlessly. If you think a little bit, these days, number one, people run everywhere. Everybody says busy, busy, right? Even with aeroplane, whatever, still you say busy, busy, right? And most of the time you are busy because you are trying to do your job, work, and to get money, right? So, with little exaggeration, I may not be wrong to say that today people work in many cases like a donkey, right? Then, having worked like a donkey, that hard-earned money, in many cases again, this hard-earned money you have to give it to a psychotherapist, because you made yourself work so much that your mind really is not functioning. Physically, you are not very well. Then you have to go to a psychotherapist, which is of course not free. They'll take all your money, you see. So what I'm trying to say is, since you need money for your living, it's not enough that you just work like a donkey, but you should also see how you are spending your life, how you are spending your money. So much of the money that we spend for many of these sensual objects are actually not necessary, useless. Like I would prefer myself drinking water than Coca-Cola. And I do this myself, I'm not just talking. And I believe that I've saved a lot of money. Not only Coca-Cola, many of these soft drinks, I have not taken an oath not to drink, because sometimes with some people, if they say something, you cannot pretend that you are something, special, But generally speaking, I don't drink, I discourage other people, you see. And water is more or less free. So good for your health. Then Coca-Cola and all this, the amount of sugar. And then many of these liquids in the packet, maybe very, very old also. We cannot justify they are good and they don't smell because they put chemicals inside it. Again, very bad for your health. So believe me, I'm not trying to turn the clock back. The whole, our lifestyle has to change. And that you can do if you observe things carefully and see. Because we are now talking about loving kindness. When you talk about this practice of loving kindness, the first person to whom you should meditate on loving kindness is yourself. And we do this in Buddhism by saying, may all sentient beings meet with happiness. May all sentient beings. You did not say, may all sentient beings excluding me. You didn't say that. May all sentient beings, which includes you. Because if you have this understanding of the need to have happiness, somebody who is able to take care of yourself properly, then it means you can take care of others also. Unless you are able to take care of yourself, it's a little bit hypocrisy to talk about helping other sentient beings, saying may all sentient beings meet with happiness. Right? We should be somebody who has experienced the purpose of well-being, because in Buddhism we talk about this life as precious human life. Precious human life. And precious human life cannot be wasted by taking all these endless junk foods, Really. And I tell my Tibetan friends, so many Tibetans, committed self-immolation. We all feel sad, But then on the other side, in a free country, people, because of lack of knowledge or ignorance or irresponsibility, whatever, many people die because of poor health. And in some cases, addiction to drugs, intoxicant drinks, you see. So most of the cases, it's not our being aware and alert and being able to practice, that we suffer. We die in many cases. So therefore this Dharma practice is not only for those who are monks and nuns or who are hermits, it's for the whole society. For whole society. Yesterday we spoke a little bit about the 3 training, out of which first is the training on morality. When we talk about morality, it basically talks about right speech, right action, right livelihood. Right livelihood actually could be included in the right action, but Buddha specifically spoke about right livelihood because he was able to see the great dimension of the economical dimension with which people relate to, you see. Right? So therefore it is really, really important to use this kind of teaching for one's own physical and mental health, and also health and well-being of others. So when we say, may all sentient beings with happiness, we are talking about reliable happiness, long-lasting happiness, uncontaminated happiness if possible. With happiness and the causes of happiness. And what are the causes of happiness? The causes of happiness can never be anger. 100% sure, can never be. Jealousy? No. Attachment? No. Conflict? No. Not so much to do with Buddhism, it's the way things are. Because many of these destructive negative emotions, they are obstructive to our flourishing, to our health, you see. Right? So therefore, this is our first line of prayer, and not only here, but always. So I was saying that the causes for happiness, you need to identify the causes of happiness. The causes of happiness are loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, joy, which we are talking about, and likewise wisdom, understanding, emptiness, bodhicitta, universal sense of responsibilities. Many of these positive emotions, they are the causes for long-lasting happiness. But if you want me to summarize what is the most important causes for happiness, it is the mind that cherishes the well-being of others. Just as all the sources of all the negative, destructive experiences, unpleasant experiences, experience of suffering, the causes of that, if we try to bring down, then the main cause, the 2 sworn enemy, are self-cherishing attitude and ignorance, which sees things as having absolute existence. These 2 are the real enemy, the 2 bosses. Number 1, self-cherishing attitude, which does not mean that you should not cherish yourself. Which here self-cherishing attitude means a mental attitude where you think only about yourself, completely disregard or ignore others' well-being. That kind of. It's not saying that you should not take care of yourself. Okay? Completely ignore others' well-being. That kind of self-cherishing attitude is one of the principal source of problem, difficulty. It is now scientifically proved that people who make a lot of self-references, always talking about I, me and mine, I, me and mine, lot of self-references, these people are prone to all kinds of illnesses, including heart attack. It is explained in many texts in Buddhism. For example, if you read the beginning chapters of entering the middle way, Madhyamika Avtara, it is there. And it is now scientifically proved. Because when you make so much self-references and not talk about others, your focus becomes narrow. Within that narrow focus, even if there is a small problem, you tend to see it as if it is unsurmountable. So you can see how much difference one can make because of one's own mental outlook, perception. Then the second and the most horrible negative boss is ignorance. Misconception of reality. Ignorance means here not just lack of knowledge, but misconception of reality. Ignorance means Not just lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge is also there, but it's not that, just that. But it primarily means misconception of reality. Reality is everything is interconnected, interdependent. But we tend to see that I am not dependent on others. I am not dependent on others. I can manage, especially if you are healthy, physically healthy, if you have some money, a little bit successful. At that level, you tend to ignore others' need. You think that I can manage, but no. This is misconception. So that is another big source, the main source of problem. So contrary to that, the source for long-lasting peace and happiness is opposite to the self-cherishing attitude. We have the mind like loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta. Especially bodhicitta, a mind which aspires to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. That is called the best of the mind you can ever find in this world. A mind which thinks about achieving the highest power, the highest happiness, the Buddhahood, not for self-glorification, but to help all other sentient beings. Imagine. So therefore, some of the Buddhist practitioners, they say, if you are sleeping, meditate on bodhicitta. If you are walking, meditate on bodhicitta. If you are talking, meditate on bodhicitta. If you are dying, meditate on bodhicitta. In all situations, it's like a panacea which will cure all your illnesses, and which we will understand only if we practice a little bit. This great qualities like loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, these are the real source of healing in the world. And I will read some quotations from the book very soon, the benefits of practice of loving kindness. You see? Right? So they are really, really very, very precious. Very, very precious. And in the case of the Buddha himself, if you read this prayer of Maitreya, which means the manifestation of loving kindness, Buddha, there is a verse which says, in the case of the Buddha, because he has always meditated on the three aspects of loving kindness. Three aspects of loving kindness, which means loving kindness with reference to sentient beings, loving kindness because by seeing the impermanent nature of sentient beings, loving kindness by seeing the lack of intrinsic existence of sentient beings. Through that way he develops this loving kindness. Because of having meditated on that loving kindness and having perfected in that practice of loving kindness, he was able to destroy all the evil forces. And he was also able to nurture and look after all sentient beings, benefited millions. I mean, this is not just a story. Today, like Buddha came 2,500 years back, and even today, millions of people are getting benefit from his teaching. Imagine. That's the power of love, or loving kindness. And we cannot exist without love. Like after the birth of the child, imagine, look at the child, if the mother doesn't give love, or father doesn't give love, that child is probably worse than an insect. Physically needing many things, but completely like vulnerable. And human beings, human babies, just to lift the head, it takes 6 months, imagine. They have to crawl 6 months, like a lot of things to be said, you see. So it's loving kindness, it's love, you know. So this is not only said in Buddhism, but I'll read few, quotations from some other sources. There's one source which says, maturity begins to grow when you can sense your concern for others outweighing your concern for yourself. The demarcation that you are a matured person, it's not just maturing in age. When you, as is explained here, when you can sense your concern for others outweighing your concern for yourself, you're a really mature person. And there is another which says, as we grow old, the beauty stills inward. Meaning that based on your personal experience, if you develop these inner qualities, then that clearly shows that you are an experienced, wise, elderly person. And this is my another favorite line, which says, love is not how many times you touch each other, but how many times you reach each other. Not how many times you touch each other. That's what we do normally. Oh, I love you. You hug and pet and things like that. That is physical touching. It's okay. That's also said to be healing in many cases. But the real indication of love is not just physical touching and hugging, but mentally reaching through loving kindness, through compassion and so forth. This is exactly, wisdom is wisdom, whether it comes from the west or the east. There's another one which says, love does not make the world go round. Love is what makes the ride worthwhile. Exactly, like it's the love which gives meaning to our life. And this one, very powerful. For both the individual and the nation, what should be most dreaded is not the loss of power, but the loss of feeling. If there is no feeling, no loving kindness, no compassion, doesn't matter you are surrounded by many shiny gadgets and billions of dollars and so forth. Doesn't make much sense. So therefore, and this line I like it because it almost like talking about the four immeasurable qualities. Is a Western quotation. Resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant with the weak and the wrong, because sometime you will have been all of this. You see, just as you need love and compassion in all these different levels of your ages, similarly, whoever you meet, young, old, striving, weak, the one quality that can make everybody, as I said yesterday, love is that quality which the blind can see and the deaf can hear. Everybody can be touched by the genuine love. Right? And this is so because love looks through a telescope, envy through a microscope. Exactly like the Buddhist teaching. Why? Because when you have this genuine love, how nice if everybody meet with happiness. How nice if none of them have suffering. If you have that genuine concern, the first thing is they will all be very attractive to you. You see? They'll all be very attractive to you. You are able to develop that telescopic or wider perspective. That's why in this practice of loving kindness, it talks about, extending their loving kindness to yourself, to your family members, to the neutral sentient beings. Then all people in the eastern direction, then all people in the western direction, then all the sentient beings in the 10 directions, like that, just to train your mind. And once you're able to do that, then you get this sense of kinship. Everybody as your friends, relatives. It is the love which makes the world beautiful. Love minimizes fault. And I've always observed, witnessed how families, they live together. Father, mother and 2-3 children. Generally speaking, exceptions are always there. Generally speaking, they live very nicely, harmoniously. Not because the father, mother and the children are perfect, no. But because there is love, greater love among them. It's not that husband doesn't make a mistake, wife doesn't make a mistake. They make the mistake, but they don't highlight just the mistake. They see the mistake, but they have the love, so therefore they will help them in a loving way. Love minimizes fault. So they are able to see the better side of that person. So they are able to live continuously together. You see. Right? It's love. When we have hatred, imagine all we do is highlight the wrong aspect of this person. So therefore to your enemy you always think, oh, my enemy. Impossible to have negotiation, dialogue with. And I can watch shape, I can promise that there are many Tibetans, perhaps me included, many Tibetans who would, when he told us, let us have negotiation dialogue, many people might think, how can we have negotiation dialogue with these Chinese leaders who killed more than 1 million Tibetans, who are continuously harassing, destroying everything? What are you talking about? Because we see these leaders as just embodiment of all the bad things, which is not necessarily true. That is not to say they have not done bad things, they have done bad things, but that is not the complete story. Right? So to make a long story short, you will not find anybody in this human world who is 100% perfect, who doesn't make a mistake. Right? So if you keep on highlighting only that fault, the bad side, there's a Tibetan saying which says that if you keep on highlighting the fault, it will hide the qualities of that person. You will not be able to see it. Because you will see what you want to see. That's the problem. That is ordinarily the case with ordinary people. We normally not make much progress because we keep on seeing what we want to see, not what we should be seeing. We keep on talking about those things which we want to talk, not what we should be talking about. We keep on listening to those things which we want to listen, not what we should be listening. That's why we don't make much progress, you see. So therefore the important thing is that this qualities, loving kindness and so forth, I mean, we need to spend more time. This is really just very short time. You need to spend more time, read some of these sutras which talks in detail about loving kindness, or not just sutra, use your common sense. Like for example, take the example of New Delhi. It is around 20 million people. So in one day, how many people will be probably killed? I don't know, but maximum say 50, 20 people in a day. But how many millions are taken care of through love and kindness? In the hospitals, in the families, That part of loving kindness, compassionate activities, even if it is not very refined, it's much more powerful than the bad things. But the problem is we tend to highlight the bad things. All the bad things come out in the newspaper. And then we start thinking, oh, humanity is hopeless. That is not the story. This is not the complete story, right? So therefore, it's important to see the benefits of loving kindness and see the drawbacks if there is no loving kindness. Imagine if there is no love in the world. How can you survive? Not only ordinary love. I'm not talking about ordinary love. I'm talking about loving kindness. Ordinary love is also relatively okay than hatred, but ordinary love has a lot of business. I love you so long as you love me. This is business. But the real loving kindness is, I love you whether you love me or not. I don't care. I love you not because you are my brother, not because you are my sister. I love you because I know you are exactly like me, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. After all, if somebody asks you the reason why you love yourself so much, we do that, right? Why do you love so much? You cannot give a correct answer by saying, I love myself so much because I'm a very clever person, or I'm a professor, or I'm a scientist, or I'm a great teacher. I mean, you can give all kinds of stupid answers, but these are not the correct answers. The correct, real answer is, I love myself because I want happiness, do not want suffering. That's the reason. That's the reason, right from the tiny insects to human beings. As the famous Tibetan scholar Gintu Chumpel, he says that the legless earthworm runs in search of peace, the eyeless ant runs in search of peace. In short, the whole living beings are running in search of peace. And especially this is true today, everybody is running. Running for what? In search of peace, happiness. But we are not getting it, or not getting enough, because what you want and what you do are contradictory. What you want is happiness. What you do is what produces more problem, because you are short-sighted. You don't understand the reality. So therefore it is important to reflect on these teachings and to develop the conviction and find out the real causes for happiness. Right? So I'll read a little bit from some of the sutras. For example, with the benefits of loving kindness. In the Mindfulness Meditation Sutra, it says, when you have this wish to benefit all sentient beings, your blood becomes pure. Physically, your blood becomes pure, and because of that, if the blood that runs in your body, in your face, becomes pure, you also become radiant. You see? Because when you have loving kindness, when you are peaceful, when you are relaxed, your breathing is proper. The flow of air is proper. When that is proper, blood flow, the circulation of blood is proper. You see, as simple as that. The mind is the precursor to the movement of the energy, right? And it is the energy which flows through the wind, through the body, that the body functions. It's amazing. Like, if something goes wrong with this flow of the energy or blood here, my hand will immediately become like this. Will not be able to move. You see? So it's all very much related to the mind. And if your face becomes radiant, what is the benefit? Everybody will like you. You become attractive. And that's why some of the texts say that the person who gives the teaching should be also a good-looking person. It doesn't mean that the bad-looking person can't teach, but it's but natural, you see. So this is observable benefit. And then, of course, achieving nirvana, enlightenment, all these are there. Then there's another quotation from the Parinirvana Sutra. I'm quoting direct from the sutra. Parinirvana Sutra, it says, with two kinds of cause and factor, you will not suffer from sickness and illness. And what are these two causes? Having loving kindness and compassion towards all sentient beings. And because of this loving kindness and compassion, if you provide medicine to people who are sick, just an example, ... Okay? So therefore a bodhisattva, or somebody who is following the bodhisattva path, must see all sentient beings as one's only child. And that kind of concentration or show of loving kindness, compassion to all sentient beings is also called the meditative stabilization towards all sentient beings through loving kindness and compassion, because with concentration you are developing such loving kindness and compassion. And once you do undertake such a practice, you will gradually become a person without any violence, Completely compassionate means completely free from violence. When we talk about non-violence, non-violence, as you know, is not just absence of violence. Non-violence is a dynamic force based on the active practice of compassion. So you will become totally non-violent. And when you become totally non-violent, you live longer. I'm quoting from the text, you live longer. And not only you live longer, you will also gradually be able to remember many lives. All these possibilities are there, but we need to practice to see the benefit. Not the complete benefit, but even if you want to get a glimpse, you know. There are so many, I don't think we have time. So similarly, both in the case of practice of loving kindness and compassion, there are sutras which says if you have one practice in the palm of your hand, you have all the practices in the palm of your hand. And what is that practice? Loving kindness. What is that practice? Compassion. Because if you have that loving kindness to all sentient beings, if you have compassion, that compassion towards all sentient beings, you cannot do all kind of other destructive activities, harmful activities to others, like exploitation, cheating, corruption, raping, whatever. All this will automatically cease. So this is really like the one quality which solves many problems at one go. At one go. Just for your information, I'll read one thing from here. Okay, just I will recite few more benefits, then I'll stop loving kindness here. The Buddha said that practitioners of the liberation of mind through practice of loving kindness experience 11 benefits. You sleep well, which is of course very good for your health. You awaken happily when you have no regret. You wake up happily. You do not have bad dreams. Bad dreams are repetitions of what you do in the day. If you fight in the day, you will fight in the night. If you fight in the previous life, you will be fighting this life. These are similar kind of patterns. And you are pleasing to human beings. Imagine when you have that genuine love and compassion, naturally there will be a smile on your face. The way your eyes look at others will be different. So you will be very pleasing. You are pleasing to all human beings. You are pleasing to spirits. Even birds, animals and other spirits, if you may or may not be aware, but if you adopt that very hostile attitude physically, mentally, they get scared. They get scared. So imagine you are unnecessarily creating fear in the mind of so many of these visible and invisible forces, sentient beings. Deities protect you. Deities means the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, other divine celestial beings, those spirits on the positive side. They feel very happy when they find people doing good things. So naturally they will be your friend, they will protect you. You may or not be able to see them. Okay? And if you are a very good practitioner, then it says, fire, poison and weapons do not injure you. You won't believe this right now. But for a practitioner, Even I heard this story of a Tibetan master whose reincarnation is still there, but his previous reincarnation. When the Chinese came, then they occasionally organize a special show to some of the big lamas. And then when the show is going on, they will either poison them or kidnap them. There are many stories like that. So this Lama, Kankar Rinpoche, I read his biography. So when we went there, then during the show they offered some food, and then which was mixed with poison. Somehow they knew about it. And then the Lama said, for many lives I was not affected by poison, so you should all eat it, no problem. So they ate it. They did not suffer. Then immediately somebody wrote, now shoot, kill them. So all his entourage, most of his entourage members, they, hold of Rinpoche's robes or hands or something like that, and then the shooting was going on. They came out unharmed, except one or two who ran here and there. They were killed, you see. So these are not very long before, quite recent happenings. There are many stories like that. And then you must have heard this story of a Tibetan Lama quite recently who was to be killed. And then he was brought among that group called struggle session, highlighting his fault, and then he will be shot. So that the Geshe or Lama, who was completely fearless, no sign of fear, and he said, you can shoot me anytime, but let me do a prayer. And then they said, yeah, okay, you can do the prayer. The prayer was from the Guru Puja. And the prayer says, today may I be able to take upon me all the sufferings, the sins, problems of all sentient beings. And whatever good things that I've done, may I be able to offer that for all sentient beings. He decided that prayer and then said, now shoot me. That actually really happened in this generation. And then not very far from here, in the Namgyal monastery, there is a, now I think he passed I think last year or year before, Lhakdorla, who, when his soul escaped, he could not escape. Then after, I don't know, more than 17, 18 years of imprisonment, he was able to finally come. Then one day His Holiness asked him to come, and they were talking. And then His Holiness asked him, did you face some threat, some problem when you were in the prison? Then he said, on some occasions, some risk. Then His Holiness thought, must be risk of his life. Was that the risk of your life? He said, no, the risk of forgetting compassion for the Chinese torturers. Because he had been all the way throughout practicing compassion. I am physically suffering, but they will suffer more because of their wrongdoing. He was feeling concerned for their wrongdoing. But then when the torture becomes more like severe, then he, as a human being, he might get irritated and upset, so there was a likelihood of forgetting compassion. This actually happened, you see. So it's possible, you get such kind of determination, it's possible. And it is said many of the Tibetans who suffered many years in prison, even not so good practitioners, but who do little bit of practice. Here, once in India, when people from different parts of the world interviewed them, they found that many of these Tibetans are amazingly more resilient than many others because of such practice. Even if it is a little, it makes a difference. So, fire, poison and a weapon do not injure you. Your mind quickly become concentrated. Your facial complexion is serene. You die unconfused. Most of us die confused, right? We die really confused because all throughout our life what we thought about was just collect money, collect wealth, that is the source of pleasure, make enemy, make friendship, that's the drama you do all the time, Then suddenly the so-called death comes, no idea what to do. Completely confused, right? So this practice is important, much in advance. And if you do not penetrate further, you fare onto the Brahma world. That means you're born in a more pure land. So these are some of the advantages. There is no need for me to read everything. So next we talk about compassion, the second prayer. May all sentient beings be without suffering and the causes of suffering. There's a lot of similarity between the development of loving kindness and compassion, but in order to precisely develop this different mental attitude, it is important to reflect in a different way. Sometimes it is easier not to think about suffering, but simply say, may all sentient beings meet with happiness. And sometimes it is more powerful to specifically think about the sufferings different individuals encounter, and especially if you are able to directly see other people's sufferings, it will make you, think about that, do something for them. So therefore, how nice if all sentient beings without suffering and the causes. Now this prayer is important because there is nobody who wants suffering. Nobody. Is there anybody who wants suffering? It's human nature that when it comes to experiencing happiness and peace, it's never enough. One more, one more, one more. When it comes to experience of suffering, even tiny, small suffering like the bite of mosquito, we don't need. That's human nature. So this being the case, it's worthwhile, and the most important project is how to alleviate suffering, how to reduce suffering. Now when we talk about reducing suffering, we are talking about reducing the suffering of the body and suffering of the mind. For reducing suffering of the body, you can take modern medications, take rest, good food and things like that. But at the end of the day, how much you fare well physically and mentally is again dependent upon your mental state. Now when you look at your mental state, this is very interesting. Listen carefully. When you look at your mental state of experience of suffering, I normally explain this in this way. For example, if you are somebody who has been thinking that I am suffering from 100% suffering, right? So out of this so-called 100% suffering which you thought you are afflicted with, something like 70% are not even suffering. Imagine 70% of that suffering is not even suffering. It's your mind made up. You thought this is suffering, this is problem. This is a very important point. And that means if you change your way of thinking, your mental outlook, your perspective a little bit, almost like 70% of suffering will disappear like that. Magic. It's absolutely true. Much is our mental creation. Good, bad, like, dislike, happy, not happy. Mental creation, much of it is. I'm not saying just mind, but much of it is mental creation. So if you are able to remove 70% of suffering, there leaves only 30%. Now out of the remaining 30%, let us say, roughly speaking, 20% are suffering, but changeable suffering. So instead of sitting there complaining, if you get up and do something, you can change that. So through effort, you can change, reduce that 20% of suffering also. And that leaves only 10% only. The remaining around 10% are not only suffering, but they are what I call as stubborn suffering. Nothing you can do with that. So what should you do? You should say, go hell with you. I have many other things to do. Really? This is important also, because normally when we encounter a suffering, especially a stubborn kind of suffering, we have this tendency to just get bogged down there, stuck there. I have met people who might have encountered a problem like 10 years back, but still they talk about it and think about it and relive that difficult experience. What is the use? You see? Like for example, if I lost my left hand, what is the point of always talking about, I wish I have the left hand? Many people have both the hands. I wish. Because I don't have the left hand, there's nothing much I can do. And that cripples you. Instead, you accept that you don't have the left hand, but you have the right hand. Right hand is the better one, stronger one. It's the one which writes the letter. And not only that, there are so many people who doesn't have both the hands, which we have all seen. So I'm lucky. Think about the positive side. It makes a huge difference. So that's why the core teaching of the Buddha is, do those things which is beneficial. Don't do those things which is not beneficial. Right? So therefore, this practice of compassion is, of course, extremely important. Now, not only in the Buddhist practice, but compassion is something that we all need. And therefore, I copied some important points from some other books, and I want to just read some of them. The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions, calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves. There's something that without which we can't do anything. The wish that others be without suffering. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world. See, saying the same thing. To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world. That means we always think that I am the center of the world. That means I am the most important. Others I don't care. I need to have everything. Dethrone it. The purpose of Buddhist practice is to enthrone compassion, to enthrone loving kindness, to dethrone self-centeredness, to dethrone ignorance. It's like election. Elect good leaders, defeat the bad leaders. At least here in the Buddhist practice, we have two political parties, the party of positive emotion, party of negative emotion. So far, the negative emotions not only won the election, but landslide majority. Now as a practitioner, our task and responsibility is to enthrone the positive emotions. Let bodhicitta, wisdom, understanding, capture the headquarters of our mind. Then the sunshine of peace and happiness will be there. Right? So there are a lot of things to say. Now with this practice of compassion, you should think about the advantages of having compassion, disadvantages of not having compassion, and the benefits of having it. And in terms of cultivation of compassion, you should cultivate compassion first, observing somebody who is suffering. When you see somebody suffering, if you have no feeling, there's no sign of compassion. Try to develop some feeling, do something. And also recite some mantras to develop compassion. Physically, verbally, mentally, we need to get involved. And as I said, that compassion will be stronger if you are able to see that person directly. And it's not only the person who is suffering, but also cultivate compassion, as I had given you the example of the monk who remained in prison for a long time. Cultivate compassion to those who are creating horrendous destructive karma, even if right now they appears to be happy at the moment. Do this by comparing him to someone given delicious food just before being executed. If you do bad things, it's really like eating poison. Okay? And then the process of development is you develop compassion to people who are dear and near to you, then neutral person, then finally the enemy. And develop that compassion not only to those people who are experiencing suffering right now, but also those people who are under the control of afflictions, which we are all karma, and therefore are not free from the suffering of pervasive conditioning. And then, both in the case of practice of loving kindness and compassion, it is important to see everybody equal. The rich, not so rich, the intelligent, not so intelligent. Because in terms of wish to have happiness and wish to shun suffering, we are all same. We are all same. That is why I go to Delhi, travel by the metro. I like it very much, because everybody get a chance to go in the same train. Otherwise, some are like traveling in a very luxurious coach or van, but others do not have that opportunity, right? Now, scientifically speaking, just to give you the hint, and you can do more reading later on. Scientifically studying, one study found that just 7 minutes of loving kindness practice, 7 minutes. Because in our daily life, from henceforth, you should try to do this meditation of loving kindness, compassion, 7-10 minutes every day. And the benefit, scientifically found. One study found that just 7 minutes of loving kindness practice boosts a person's good feelings and sense of social connection, if only temporarily. It may be temporary, but it really boosts your connection to the rest of the society and so forth. And consider a random, no, not that one. This brief loving kindness training resulted in people feeling more relaxed and also donating to charity at a higher rate than those in a comparison group who did a comparable amount of light exercise like stretching. There's a huge difference between one who did the meditation compassion and who did just stretching exercises. This is quotation from a book which one of my friends, recently gave me during the Mind Life conference. They did a lot of research on this. Then, in that book, there is a section on nurturing compassion where, to me, the most clear explanation and the differentiation between compassion and empathy I found. Because I read many of these, and some say empathy is like better than compassion, some say compassion is better than, but this is now scientifically tested in the laboratory of this famous scientist lady, Tanya Singer. She's from Germany, and I had the privilege of attending the Mind Love in South India. She was there. So, according to her research, her postdoc research on empathy revealed that when we witness the pain and suffering of someone else, we activate networks which underlie this very same feeling in ourselves. A discovery that got wide attention, laying the foundation for empathy research in neuroscience. She was responsible for starting that project. But compassion, feeling concern for the person suffering, seemed to involve a different set of brain circuits. Those for feeling of warmth, love and compassion. So they are not equal according to our finding. They are not equal. The difference is, when he cultivated empathy, sharing the suffering of another, she saw the action in his neural networks for pain, but once he began to generate compassion, loving feelings for someone who was suffering, he activated brain circuitry for positive feelings, reward and affiliation. So practice the empathy, there is likelihood of getting kind of empathy fatigue. But if you practice the genuine compassion, then the so-called compassion fatigue that we normally talk about is less likelihood. But if you do a wrong kind of practice of compassion, it is possible. But if you do the genuine practice of compassion, which you do, then it has a positive feeling, rewarding. Okay? Compassion, she found, muted the empathic distress that can lead to emotional exhaustion and burnout. Instead of simply feeling with the other person's angst, as you do with the practice of empathy, compassion training led to that activation of completely different brain circuits, those for loving concern and to positive feelings and resilience. So there's no need for me to read all of this, but recently there was a case that came out in the newspaper of a nurse who was a senior nurse, but she suffered from emotional burnout. Then she attended this CBCT, compassion-based, cognitive-based compassion training, and which is primarily meditation on compassion based on wisdom, cognition, and she healed completely and was able to go back and work, which normally is quite difficult when you reach such a stage of burnout. So the difference here, if I try to elaborate, the Sanskrit word for compassion is karuna, which means stopping the bliss, stopping happiness. Meaning that when you develop compassion, you develop this sense of concern of other suffering, and that makes you a little bit unhappy or a little bit disturbed, right? When you genuinely show that concern towards others who are suffering, you get a little bit disturbed or perturbed, right? But that kind of disturbance is on the surface, because deep down that kind of disturbance is kind of based on your intentional development of compassion for others. So deep down there is stability, there is courage. And His Holiness gives this example, it's like an ocean. There may be small waves on the surface, but deep down it is completely calm, unmoving and stable. So therefore you don't suffer from emotional burnt out if you develop the right compassion. Because the right compassion is based on wisdom. It's based on practice of equanimity, where you try your best and you with the realization that you can't solve the whole world's problem. Right? Therefore there is this famous saying which is said to be said by Buddha or something, where he tells Ananda that Ananda, don't get distressed when sentient beings are suffering because of their own karma. You see? So there are things that you can do, there are things that you can't do. The important thing is you try your best to help them, and then don't get sucked with that kind of problem. Don't get bogged down with that kind of problem. You see? So therefore it is really important to develop this loving kindness, compassion based on the understanding of the reality, the way things are. Right? So many things to say, but some questions. Stop here then.
What was the name of the book you said?
I don't even remember now.
The author was Tanya Singer?
No, this is written by this Daniel Goleman and Richie Davison. They co-authored that book. I forget. I'll bring the name tomorrow. So in that book there is a chapter 6. The title is Primed for Love. Because even if you look at the wiring of the brain, they say that it's primed for love, for connection. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
I'm Pınar.
Huh?
Turkey. Pınar. I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago, the yoga philosophy and yama and niyama, we need to self-control. And we need self-control.
Self-control.
Self-control for something. And you say, and sometimes we have 5 sense desires, television, phone, and delicious food, clothes. If we want to feel non-violence, after stopping these things, for example, not eating 5 pieces of cookie, just 1 piece of, but after this, I can feel unhappy because I want to eat all of them. Maybe 5 pieces of cookie, all my dish maybe. But can we say, after we used to have no desire, maybe we will not have some desire about eating 5 pieces of big cookie. Can we say we can reach balance, just 1 piece?
Exactly. So here there's a distinction between positive habituation and addiction. The first thing that you need to know is, in Buddhism we are not saying that you don't enjoy life, okay? You can have cookie. Okay? But that does not mean to say that you keep on eating cookie so much that you get addicted to it.
I see.
Okay? Addicted to it. And addiction is very bad, very dangerous. Who was it? Tanya Singer or somebody, some another lady who was the director of the Institute of Addiction in Washington. When she attended the Mind Life conference, she gave a beautiful presentation on addiction. There she said, the brain has the natural capacity to make a distinction between what is good for your health and not good for your health. If you leave it in that level, in the natural capacity, the brain has the capacity to tell you what is good for you, what is not good for you. You call it brain, you call it mind, you have that capacity. But if you get addicted to something, then that brain which is related to addiction takes over. And then this natural capacity of the brain to make the judgment stops functioning. Imagine, you are in big problem now. Then because of this has taken power, then it says bring more biscuit, more biscuit, more biscuit. I like 5, I like 6, I like 7. Then your stomach become like this, still I need more, you know. Addiction, because then you have no control, especially if the addiction is strong, you have no control. That's what we see with the drug addicts and so forth, you know. They lose shame, they lose name, fame, money, everything. You will see them, you know, very intelligent, educated, but you see them falling at the side of the road where everybody is looking but still sitting there, no shame, you know, no sense of control. So right in the beginning it is important to have that balance right from the beginning, to say what is really good for you, not good for you, make that judgment. Okay? Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, like, how to be ambitious but be contented with what you have?
Ambitious, the word, English word ambitious, I don't know it's a good word or not. But to aim higher, you know, if we use some another better word, to have higher objectives, aims, try to do that, then that must go with contentment, in the sense that it's not enough to have higher aims, but is it an achievable aim or not? Because there are a number of people who have such a higher aim without taking into consideration their own situation, possibility, you know, and then the people just go mad, you see. I mean, that is not to say you should immediately give up, oh, I have no capacity, I have no support. Of course, you make as much possible, you know, make effort, but everything should have limit, you see. And more importantly, unfortunately, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama also says, that in the case of us ordinary people, when it comes to doing not so good things, we have many higher aims. be it for making money or making your health or whatever, you do a lot of hard work. Especially for the physical related development. The whole world is running today for the material development, which is primarily related to the body, nothing to do with the mind. Now when it comes to improving the mind, even the so-called Buddhist practitioners or spiritual practitioners, even if they do 5-10 minutes meditation, they say, oh, this morning I did 5 minutes meditation, as if done a big thing, you see. So with the mental development, we are all contented, satisfied. With the material development, never contented, running and running, running and running. And he's always is kind of concerned about that. Because he's always said, this is not realistic. Because in terms of external material development means physical development. Physical, anything that is physical, material, has limitation. How can you make unlimited progress in an area which has a limitation? Like, for example, how much destruction you are going to do the environment if every country thinks about this GDP growth every year. From where the source of that growth is water, source of the growth is tree, source of the growth is minerals. They all have limitation. And that's what we are experiencing today. Nature is dying. Water getting polluted, air getting polluted, the so-called big cities hardly breathe. Now in terms of internal development, hardly anything there. So that's why right in the beginning I said that much of the problem that we experience today is a sign of mental starvation, spiritual starvation. We are not doing anything for the mind. Whereas the mind is the real source of happiness and suffering, as I said earlier. So therefore now the real revolution has to take in the case of the development of the mind. And with that development of mind, with the focus of the mind, you can actually achieve those things that you want to achieve. And without having that concentration, attention, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, without that, you work very hard, but there is a limit beyond which you can't go. Right? Okay. Short meditation. So not just meditation, but I want to know your interaction, your response to the importance of loving kindness, compassion, and so forth. Not necessarily today, but or even not necessarily tomorrow, but if you occasionally think whether it's really, really so important to have loving kindness, compassion, or as some people say, oh, in today's world, one is to be aggressive. Especially the business people. I met a number of business people. Guruji, with due respect, in today's business circle, unless you do a little bit of lying and cheating, you can't climb the higher rung of the success, you see. Many people, I've met many of people who say things like that. So in this kind of cases, you really need to, when you do this kind of practice, you really need to have strong determination. Determination, not sheepishly follow what others are doing. If others are achieving success and making a lot of money, that's their way of seeing things. But do you think that is the solution for your problem of the world? And one of the most repeatedly cited example today is, oh, today you are just one individual cannot do anything. You are just like cog in the wheel. When the giant wheel moves, you move. There's nothing you can. I don't agree with that. If you're cog in the wheel, at least come out from that wheel. Probably the wheel might stop, you see. So really, it's really important to have that strength and determination to do differently, a little bit differently. Of course, you need something to eat, a place to sleep, and how much you need. How much is how much? And that is something I myself, not in a rigorous way, but I'm practicing that, you see. Even in the case of stupid person like me, I can go to different places where I can get much more money than I'm getting here, you see. But that is not my my interest, you see. So I'm trying my best to do those things which I think is useful and making more sense, Even if it is a small thing, I think it's important to do that, rather than following what everybody is doing, you see. Right? So, 1 minute meditation. Thank you. Then in the page that I had given you, there is a one verse prayer which I forgot to recite yesterday. We can recite that today. Yeah. Conclusion, dedication. This is from Bodhicharyavatara. Like with the meditation, I've written 5 minutes breathing, normally if we have time. Then reflect on each of the 4 immeasurable in sequence towards yourself, others, and the whole world, universe. That's how we normally do. Then conclusion, dedication, we recite this together. May those with fear be fearless. May those under bondage be freed. May those powerless be empowered. May our hearts join in friendship. And that leaves the post-meditative session practice, which is a practice that we need to do 24 hours. Thank you.